let's also, I'm going to share this live to Facebook and we will get started. Are people still coming in and telling us where they're from and what they make by hand? Just give me one. Make beds by hand, that's awesome.
And clean houses.
So does anybody have any rebirthing breathing jokes? Or holotropic breathwork jokes? Are there any, Angel? Got any holotropic breathwork jokes while we wait?
Jokes? Oh my goodness. No. I just all of a sudden gone. There was this one cartoon that Stan always puts up, and now I can't remember it. Do you remember, Mireya?
Oh, I'm a terrible joke teller. I forget all of them.
I know. I'm awful. Now I want to look for the cartoon to see if I can.
One of a kind upcycled couture tutus for adults. That's the move. All right, so hopefully Susana will be back in a moment. And she's back. All right, fantastic.
I'm sorry, you guys. I have a plumber coming.
That's the one. Yes.
That's
the psychotic. Yes.
Finally.
That's our joke.
There's a joke. It's in there. It's in the chat. That's totally the one I was trying to think of. Yes.
How do you do breath work when a plumber arrives at your house?
Exactly. Please clean my pipes. Unstuck my bow. Anyway, he's taken care of.
Awesome. Good. And if he has some wisdom to share, bring him up on stage. No problem. So I'm really happy that you're all here to talk about songs and altars and breath work, and how all of these tools are used across cultures for integration. I'm really excited about it. And let's see, I will read the description of the talk and then I'll do brief introductions. Everybody, welcome to the second talk of the Mount Tam Psychedelic Integration Jam. Really happy you're here. Also, we still do, I was running a little special that the next 15 people who buy a Forever Access Pass gets a TAM Integration Jam poster, and there's still a couple left, I think. So shoot us an email if that's something that you want. Integration of spontaneous or induced holotropic states of consciousness can be addressed by working with multi-sense modalities that support embodiment, as well as the enrichment and amplification of the symbolic significance of experience. In this context, this presentation will address ways in which breath, song, and altar making can be used separately and in combined ways to support integration processes. This is a talk I've really been looking forward to because it's just so practical and hands-on. Susana Bustos, Ph.D., is a clinical psychologist, and she teaches and mentors students at the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco. She conducts independent research on entheogenic shamanic traditions of the Americas and holds a private integrative practice in Berkeley, California. Thank you for being here, Susana. Angel is a licensed marriage and family therapist and Groff certified holotropic breathwork practitioner with 3 decades in the healing profession and a tie-dye collection that I celebrate and I'm a little bit envious of. Mireya Alejo Marcet, MA, MFT, is an artist, licensed psychotherapist, astrologer, expressive arts therapist, and ceremonial leader. She is certified in the Groff Transpersonal Training, GTT, in 1993 and has facilitated groups and individuals in this approach internationally for almost 3 decades. She is adjunct faculty at the California Institute of Integral Studies. astrology. There's a whole other topic for integration. So welcome. Thank you all so much for being here, and I will let you begin.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. What an honor. Yeah, I'm just so pleased to be on this panel with these two women who have been incredible mentors to me in this work and in this field, and who've become amazing friends and colleagues over the years. So we're going to talk about integration, and we're going to weave through holotropic breath work, plant medicines, altar making, using music as a means of integration as well. And I guess I will start and talk about integration, which really is part of preparation. I know that may sound strange, but truly when we begin preparing for an expansive experience, we are beginning the process of our integration. It really weaves through the entire experience. Sometimes we may have processes if we have a big plant medicine experience and it's triggering and it opens something up, but not entirely finished, that can be assisted by using holotropic breath work. And just to take a minute to sort of describe holotropic, because some of you may not know exactly what that is. It is a method of accessing expanded states of consciousness, or as Stan calls it, non-ordinary states of consciousness, by utilizing breath and music. This is not something one can do on their own, which is a question that's often asked. It really is necessary that you have a trained facilitator. And those of us who are facilitators trained for a number of years with Groff transpersonal training to become certified. So with holotropic breath work, it's a deeper and faster type of breathing, and it includes music that we put together, sets that we put together that bring about expanded states. Gosh, I don't know why I am just all of a sudden frozen. I think it's because I can't see people and I like to interact with people. So in holotropic breath work, we have groups, people come together, you have a person who's a breather and a person who is a sitter. And in this process, the sitter holds sacred space for the person who is the breather, who is lying on a mat with a blindfold and breathing. And then in the holotropic breath work, you also may experience an energy blockage that needs to move. And so the facilitator will help you with doing body work, which is not a massage technique. It's actually helping you with some applied pressure to breathe through and move through something that needs to come out. People experience a lot of things, but very commonly they'll experience these perinatal matrices, which are part of kind of like a rebirthing breathwork process, where you can re-experience being in the womb, you can re-experience moving through the birthing process and then coming out the other side. And Stan talks a lot about this, these perinatal matrices, because it's such a rich place for doing the work, this work. There's the first matrix, which is where you're inside the womb, which is, it could be a very safe place. It could be very nurturing, very wonderful, safe womb where, the mother was treated very well through pregnancy. She was without stress. Life was very easy. Or it could be an experience of a toxic womb where maybe there was some abuse or some drug use or something else going on, high stress situation. So when doing the breath work, you go into this process, you may experience either or both of these things. And then as the contractions begin, there's this second matrix of feeling like you're stuck in this place where you can't escape. And Stan refers to it as hell no exit. So the contractions happen, they're coming, but you can't get out. And then eventually the cervix will open and the person moves through. And in holotropic breath work, you can actually literally be re-experiencing this, where you're crawling through and pushing through, and the facilitators, sometimes more than one facilitator, will be holding pillows all around you. We're very highly trained pillow movers, and we'll be keeping you safe while you're moving through your process. And then eventually the birthing happens, and people can re-experience how they were welcomed into this world. Were they received with love? Were they received with kindness and joy? Were they somebody who their birth was a very traumatic process? Was the cord wrapped around their throat? And all of this has everything to do with integration and how we integrate these processes. Sometimes you may have had a really big psychedelic experience and still not have moved all the way through. And then you can utilize holotropic breath work for continuing this process, for this ongoing process of integration. You know, the thing is that integration is something that's ongoing. It continues throughout all of these different modalities. And some of us practice one particular modality of healing, and some of us weave a variety of modalities. And for me, you know, in doing my own work, I have found it really important to do things like create the mandalas, which is part of the process of the breath work, where we will draw something that represents our experience, and I will place that on my altar and keep it there until I have the next experience. I also enjoy things like doing soul collage and creating collage cards, where I will actually I have a box full of National Geographic magazines and utilize those. I utilize them not only for myself, but with all of my clients who are doing this type of work, who maybe they don't feel like they're an artist who can draw or paint, but they feel really comfortable cutting pictures out of magazines and putting them together. And in doing this and in placing this in a place, whether it's on your refrigerator or on your altar or somewhere where you can see it, you've begun this process of integration. You know, you have something to remind you of the experience. You have something to help you as you're moving through. So, you know, instead of going from breath work to breath work to breath work, or ceremony to ceremony to ceremony, you are able to take the time in between to reflect on the experience, reflect on what it has brought up. Was it a rebirthing experience? Was it something entirely different? Did you become one with the universe? And in that, what is this lesson? And how do I metabolize this lesson? How do I move through whatever it is, leave the things I don't need behind, and become the new me that I am on the other side of it? You know, the thing with holotropic breath work is that it's something that when you're in a ceremony, you're not necessarily engaging in dialogue with your facilitator. However, with breath work, it can be something that becomes dialogical. It also, with the body work, allows for a somatic release. I don't know how many of you have been in ceremony, but you're usually very quiet and having an internal process, and there's a facilitator or someone who is holding that sacred space, but you're not engaging in the same kind of way. So with the breath work, you can come into a place where you're held in a different way, and you're able to engage with that person as well as with the sitter. So you have a facilitator and you have a sitter who are people there to hold you through the process, and then after the process as well. Gosh, I'm just looking at time to make sure that we're good. There are things like the fact that music or sacred music, ikaros, can pull you into those induced holotropic states. And it can be very helpful to have a therapist who's skilled at working with those states to continue this process with. Gosh, you guys, what am I forgetting? Susana, Mireya?
Did I see you're about to jump in, Susana?
No, that's fine. I think that you're doing great, Angel. I really like the, like the fact that you're talking about how integration is just an ongoing process, and it's not what happens after an expanded state of consciousness. It's a function of how you prepare, how you go through the experience, what you face, and then like what happens after. Right? We've talked also, in many circles, we talk about intention, and how we hold an intention. How is so that also is a guiding thread through the phases, before and after and during. I wonder if you can tell us about holding an intention in holotropic breath work, and how does that work?
Well, it's entirely different in holotropic breath work, and thanks for bringing that up. So, and a lot of people who may come to breath work from doing plant medicine work or other sacred work where they're told to hold an intention, come to breath work with an intention. And this is something that we actually don't encourage in the holotropic setting, because you may come with an intention, but we just never know what will happen. Once you lay on the mat, once you start breathing, it could be something entirely different. It could be that this thing that you're thinking of as an intention actually weaves through, but the breath and our inner healer, our inner healing intelligence takes us where we need to go, not necessarily where we want to go. So it's a completely different process. Sorry, my dog. I have dogs and children. And so when we come with an intention to breath work, that intention could just be a wash. And one of the things I love about when in Maria's circles, when we start the circles, she says, what would you like to throw into the fire? Literally, she'll put a candle in the middle and invite people to maybe throw their intentions into the fire or their fears or what have you. So before we start, we try to let go of having that intention. We talk a lot in holotropic breath work about having an inner healing intelligence and trusting in that inner healing intelligence. And I have seen it to be true so many times in my own work and working with so many people on the mat, that once the breathing starts and once the process begins and you sort of drop into that space, that we just don't know what can happen. Stan talks frequently about this pair who had met at one of the large breath works. And, the man was in his process, and the sitter was a woman, and he was in this very deep process. And she looked at him and she thought, oh, he needs someone to hold him. So she leans over and starts rocking him like a baby, when in his process, he was actually experiencing being in a war. And so she literally pulled him out of his process. So we don't know what someone is experiencing. We don't know what we're going to experience. And whereas with plant medicines, we want to come in with an intention, and that intention can be our kite string that helps us when the ceremonial work, when the plant medicine work gets incredibly difficult. With holotropic, we have to be in this open place of trusting the process, which can be really frightening and really profound. And in trusting the process, we move through material that will surprise us and is sometimes scary and sometimes wonderful. And in the end, it's so important to be able to metabolize this material, to move through an integration process, not just in the few days following a breathwork experience, but in the weeks and months following an experience. I myself, I've saved every mandala and every collage that I've done in this work, both breath work and with plants. And I might reflect back on something through a journal or an art journaling piece that I did 10 years ago that has followed this thread from then to now. And this integration is something that didn't just happen overnight. It happened over many years and is continuing to happen. And this is what a lot of people will notice and will find in their life, that they're continually integrating these little bits and pieces of the process as we go along. So it's not like, here's this big experience, boom, it's over and I am good, I'm healed, I'm integrated, and I'm ready to move on to the next experience. The other thing just to touch on is that I know that some people here may be from the the deadhead community, maybe from the music community, the festival community, and people who have had a lot of recreational experiences with substances, with expanded states of consciousness. And somebody still uses their mandala from 3 years ago. Yes, yes, yes. That's wonderful. So sometimes we have these crazy experiences, right? I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I followed the Grateful Dead around in the 80s on tour. I lived in a bus, I lived in a hearse, I went from show to show, and I did a lot of expansive things. And it was incredible and it was wonderful. And I had a wild ride, sometimes a really freaking scary ride. And I thank God and everything else for the friends that held me together during the scary rides. But what I have found is that for me, recreational is not the way. And it may be for you, and that's all right. But just to hold the possibility that the recreational can become the sacred, right? And just holding that as something that is a possibility. And if it becomes sacred for you, finding a way to integrate that process. I may be over time, so I'm going to pass the baton. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you so much, Angel, for laying out this incredible practice that is holotropic breath work and a thread that unites the three of us here in a practice that we all do and that was developed by Stan and Christina Groff as an alternative to all the work that had been done with LSD, and that would bring people to these expanded states and really just all these incredible pieces that Angel, you just shared so well about this work and what it brings us to and what it offers. It really offers us this incredible structure to really, really go deep into the integration process of expanded states in this process of preparation during session and then integration afterwards. So for any of you interested, there's so much material out there in that work. And really to be able to have a map for the journeyer is very, very rich in what it offers, as well as Angel was giving us the example of the birth as one of those pieces. So really also tying a thread to the end of what you were mentioning as we connect with the sacred. This is another part of the piece that we're bringing here, which is the connection, the practice with altar work, which is what I'm presenting here. And I came to the connection and the practice of altars since I was a little kid. I'm from Mexico originally, and the world of altars and what we call ofrendas in Mexico is very important for us during the Day of the Dead, what we call Dia de Muertos in November, which is a multicultural celebration in many cultures. And specifically in my culture, it's almost like the whole world comes alive in our relationship to our ancestors, to the sacred, to the great mystery. And specifically for me, it came deeply alive in my teenager years as I lost my grandfather, and who was a very important person in my life. And I found that creating this altar had me continue in relationship with him in a whole new way, a way that I didn't know initially even what it was. However, anytime I created this altar, it was instantly that I felt the sacred, that I felt in that time. I didn't even have a word for sacred, but I felt that which is beyond me, that which is bigger than me. I felt how the unknown came to life, the great mystery. I found a place where I could process deep emotion of grief, of loss, of despair. I found a place where I could be in that intimate connection with the ancestor world and get to discover it. And I also found a place where beauty and symbols would help restore my being. And the moment the lights, the candles were lit, the flowers were there, there's so much beauty that I have learned that beauty is an incredible piece of the healing work and the restoration of our soul. And that's a big piece also of this weaving of the altars. So there's three basically components that have woven into this practice that I developed, and I call altar practice. For some people, the word altar is a little tricky, so sometimes I call it / sacred space / creative installation, and it's kind of now a weaving of these three. It did have its origin in my culture. And then through my experience with plant work, ceremonial work, I started connecting even deeper to the altar as a living entity, that while in ceremony, before, during, and after, it could provide this incredible anchor for everything that was happening inside of me. It also brought a sense of relief, a sense of connectedness. I could sit in front of it and allow me to be in that unknown space. I could process deep emotions without knowing what they were. And I could really invite that sense of, again, the sacred, the numinous, as also has been called, as a really important piece of what was arising through the work that we do, whether it's through the breath or the medicine work. And finally, the last influence that came into this work is the expressive arts therapy work and my work as a painter, where I contemplated on this concept when, as a painter, you're about to paint and you have an empty canvas, as this concept, how is it to face that big blank unknown and from there allow the creative process to happen, and therefore to allow the inner world to express herself, to allow whatever is moving inside of us, whether we are anxious, we don't know what's happening, we need to ground. And I started finding that there could be a way through this creative process that people would find that with the help of all kinds of materials, with the help of their own creations, their mandalas, as Angel was talking about, that they could actually really ground their experience. And so that's how this all, I'm really, there's a lot more. I'm summarizing in a nutshell the important pieces. But this is how they all wove together into this practice that I call altar creation. And that yes, I see a message from el altar es un punto de conexión ancestral con atributos y manifestaciones que crean balance al ser. Sí, yes, exactly. It does. The altar is a point of connection, ancestral connection with attributes and manifestations that create balance in the being and in the self. Absolutely, completely agree. So it has become, I started bringing this practice to my different groups. I tend to be somebody that's kind of like a laboratory. I have to experience it and then bring it out, and then the process evolves into what it's meant to be. I don't think through things. And so I started just offering it in small groups, and slowly the process came together. And I now offer it in a residential week-long about the topic of integration. And it really has become a way to really really be in the experience of integration, which in my eyes is really about bridging the deep experiences that we go through, the inner worlds, into our lives, and finding those bridges, finding those connection, finding those ways of really anchoring what's happening inside, sometimes expanding, sometimes deepening, some depends what the experience is. And so people working with their altars, you know, we use them sometimes in preparation, sometimes they're there throughout the experience, and then in the after process. And as the process continues, there is, I'll just start, end this one little piece and see the questions. I see you, Daniel. As the process, another piece of the, I can relate to what you said, Angel, this virtual moments of freezing.
Yes, can't see them.
As people, one of the things, I'll start again with my own experience, that's always helpful to me. One of the things I learned in the holotropic breath work, in my early years, I was going through almost what I now see could be like a kundalini or spiritual emergence happening. And I didn't have much support in Mexico. I would come back and forth to the United States to do my training. And what I would do at home is I started making the mandalas. Like all of a sudden I would start making mandalas, and sometimes I would go through hours in the night, just mandala after mandala. And that's really how I started painting, because I started seeing the potential that the arts have in really helping us hold deep experience as we tap into the symbolic, as we tap into the imagination. And as we really add a multi-sensory experience, right, through texture, through color, through breath, through movement, that enters a stream that matches what we meet in these experiences, right? When we're working with the medicines, with the breath, that doesn't necessarily happen through our rational intellectual mind. And so through these modalities that we're presenting here for you, they can really hold us in a way that they're speaking the language that we tap as we're going deep into psyche, and therefore help us to move these experiences forward and to embody them in a whole other way, which is, this is the last bit I was going to mention with the altar work. As we call into our creation space an object, an image, perhaps it's something from nature that represents that which is inside of us that often we have no words for. It will be grounded and concretized in the external. And so that the creative work, the expressive arts help us as concretizations of that language that is living inside of us as we do deep work, and that perhaps we haven't entered in or being able to give a word, and therefore move us forward as we're creating these bridges into our lives. So all the gifts that we have received in sessions after breath work can really meet our lives and build that. I see. Okay, so there's some questions. Let me see. I have a few minutes left from my chunk, but just a couple minutes before I pass it on to Susana. I don't see, Daniel, was there a particular question you saw? I'm not.
No, somebody raised their hands, but it's okay. I mean, somebody wants to attend an altar building workshop, but they can connect with you after.
Yeah, I think all our websites are in the information, if I'm not mistaken. And we'll also put them here in the chat.
That's great.
Wonderful. I think looking at the time, I'll pass it on to you to Susana, so then we can have just a few moments at the end.
Thank you, Mireia. That was fantastic. And I also want to ask Daniel, like, how much more time do we have? Because I think we
So
started.
we do have to end promptly at 2:15 Eastern time, 11:15. If you want to take additional questions or meet and greet with people, we have the Azo chat, which is like a little virtual space with video, and it's kind of a cute little place where you can hang out. So you're welcome to mingle afterwards.
That's great. Okay, so I have some time, and then I would love it if you know, we can open it up for questions also as a panel, and we can ask each other questions. You know, it's so interesting what both of you are like presenting about, and of course, holotropic breathwork has been for the three of us like our kind of background, the place where we were structured into how to work with expanded states of consciousness, you know, originally. And I also find it so interesting what you're talking about, Mireia, about altar making as a landing space or a meeting point between the numinous experience, right? The spiritual experience that we have in an expanded state, and our sensorial somatic experience of the world and ourselves. So it's a meeting point where like both the humanness, right, and the numinousness that is also me, but it's not seen. It's like manifested right there, right? And a lot of the integration that we're looking into has to do with embodiment of those teachings, those openings, those states of beings that we get to tap when we're like in an altered state that are like desirable, that are you know, better ways of being in the world, basically. So you know, I always say that's why we, you know, take plants. That's why we do journeys, that, you know, we do journeys in order to remember those states that we can be in daily life, you know, and how do we transform what we have in, you know, in this world, you know, through embodying that, and also embodying relationships with others that are better. I don't know, I don't like that word better, but something like that, that are healthier, you know, with myself as well. So I'm bringing in the topic of sound as of sound, of song, as part of the integration thread as well here. And I've been like interested in sound and song for many, many years. I love to sing. Since I was little, I sang. My mom always told me that I was out of tune. And then like progressively I've become better, but it's a practice of mine to sing. You know, I have a daughter as well. She's 11, and I have sung to her since she's little, since she was in the womb. It's very interesting to think that in all the cultures of the world, all the cultures that use expanded states, there's always a component of music that accompanies the altered state. So we have three main ways where a trance state or an altered state is accompanied in indigenous cultures around the world. Strumming or rattling. We have singing, very important. And we also have dancing, and I'm just like bringing in dancing, because normally when there is dancing, there is also rattling and drumming. There is breath involved in all of them, in those three components. So we're just like engaging with the breath and the sound in one way or another, and we're engaging also with the body movement. When we're rattling and drumming, we're moving. When we are singing, even if we're like standing like that, there are micro movements that are happening in us, and we're moving air. And guess what? It has been studied too that when we are singing, we're also eliciting movement in other people who are receiving it. So it's not just through drumming, but the other person is also feeling some sort of movement. It's engaging in resonance with our own micro movements and others in that way. So now think of something. Think that song, it's I'm just gonna go back and say in Holotropic, I'm talking about how music accompanies these journeys, for centuries, right? Into expanded states. And then Angel was talking also about holotropic breathwork and how holotropic breathwork has all this sequence of music as well that accompanies the journey. Right? And there is, for many reasons, we're using music, right? What I was saying before is like, think of this. Think that sound is one of the first sensorial organs that develops in the womb. There is something there with sound that is orienting and structuring. It's orienting and structuring. It gives a referent. In the case of being in the womb, in an oceanic type of context, right? Where the differentiation between me and the other is still not there, right? Does that sound familiar about an altered state? Mm-hmm. Now think that according to Rolando Benenson, which, who is an Argentinian music therapist I really admire, he talks that it's in the womb with those sounds of the whooshing of the mother's blood and the digestion and all that thing, that the very core of our sonic identity gets formed. So he talks about layers of sonic identity. Wow, that's very big, right? Layers of sonic identity, like an onion that just like goes from these very core sounds to music and, like in different cultures and likes that we have, he identifies 4 or 5 layers of that go from the very core to the more like culturally shaped in that way. But he considers them part of our identity. So there is also this other quality, which is like how the thread of who we are at the very core level can be like taken also through sound out in that way. So we grab the very core of who we are and we bring that to memory, to remember who we are. And again, that's part of the integration. Like we want to remember who we are right here. Part of that core identity that Rolando Benz talks about, he says, sonic identity is like pentatonic scales. Pentatonic scales are the scales that, we sing lullabies in, a lot of Ícaros, the songs that I love too from the shamanic mestizo tradition of Peru that works with ayahuasca, and I have studied, are in pentatonic scale. They are like really primary in that way. They call the very core sonic identity out, right? In many of the songs that are used for trance states around the world also are constructed, built on pentatonic scales. So there's a lot to say there, but I don't want to just go too far from here. I just want to say how music can not only be a lead through the altered states because of its structuring function, because of the engagement of the body, the complete body of the person, through the sounding and the resonances of that, in their effect on breath, for example, not only because it can bring like the core identity, touch the core identity, and be a sonic referent for time and space within the state that we're in. Like imagine that like music unfolds in time, right? It unfolds in time, and it's coming from there, right? Or it's coming from here. Although sometimes we have like the sensation that we are like totally in the music, right? But it gives us a sense of referent in terms of space and time. So music, it's not only that important in altered states, but it's that important to bring us back into integration here, to just grab us, to integrate things. So I'm going to introduce, and I know that I'm talking a lot and probably I need to stop soon. Please let me know. I wanna bring about another concept, that's the concept of specific state memory. That's a concept that I first read in one of Rick Strassman's books, and he's going to be presenting at this conference too, which is there are times where we don't remember when we go into a journey, we don't remember when we come back to this reality, what we lived in that state. And it's only when we go back that we say, oh my God, how could I have forgotten? I know this place, right? So music is a way, an Ariadne's thread, particularly song, to make us remember. We can bring the state through that thread back through music into this plane of reality. So if I ask you, do you remember the first song that you danced with your crush, you know, when you were like 15 years old? And you say, maybe yes, okay, it was this one, you know, and you play it. All the sensations, a lot of memories will come to you, will come back. Physical sensations, like memories of smells maybe and stuff. So that also happens when I can retrieve certain songs and I need to stop, I know, and from the altered state and play them back or sing them back in ordinary life. I'm going to leave it until here. Maybe I can complete a few more thoughts when we open it up for questions.
Thank you.
Somebody's asking Orlando's last name. The music therapist.
Oh, it's Rolando Benenson. I'm just like...
you can put it in the chat maybe.
There.
There.
And if you hit the Q&A button, there's a question that I think Susana would be good to answer.
I'll read it
Which
to you, Susanna, so that other people can hear it too.
Sure.
And before I do, I want to thank you for talking about how singing is breath work. Because I like holotropic breath work, kind of, but I really like chanting. And for me to move into if I want to move into an altered state using my breath, chanting works much better for me than holotropic breath work. And so I guess it speaks to how nice it is that you all have your own focus, because, integration is not a one size fits all practice.
Yes.
But Jacob has a question, and then, we'll take more questions. And if there's a lot of questions pop up, we can move to the Azo room and you guys can hang out and meet some people there if you like. But Jacob said he was gifted with a small Huicholi gourd bowl and would like to work with it in breathwork and on my altar. I am reading about them from the writings of Olivia Selena Kindle, who describes the gourd as a microcosm. Can anyone help further the depth of what this gift holds in the way of both honors the Huicholi culture and allows personal growth? Also, if there are sounds or music which have a resonance with these gourds. And that's for anybody.
I don't know if I got a little lost with the question itself.
Are you familiar with Huicholi gourds?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And will you just talk about them for a bit and how they can be used with, on an altar and in a spiritual practice?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it depends also on branches of the huichol as well, but like the gourd itself remember that in huichol culture we have like 3 elements that are very important. One is the maize, the deer, and the third one is escaping to me right now, that become like a unity in that way. When you rattle, you're calling in these three aspects. You're connecting with the very essence of the teachings of the Huichol, and of course the Ph.D. That's the three component of this unity. You're just like calling in the trio here with the voice of the rattle. And the voice of the rattle is full of harmonics. This is also very important. So there are voices that are created within the harmonics that are reaching the spirit world in that way. So of course, there is a very specific way of being trained in the different traditions, how to play certain music and how to develop that. But I would say to this person, like, start listening to those voices that are created like in between the real sounds of the rattle. Keep playing it, keep listening to it, because that's gonna take you where you wanna go. Those are the ghost sounds and melodies that are gonna teach you things, if that's helpful.
Well, I'd love to add one thing there that was brought to mind for me, Susana, with what you just said. I find one of the things I invite when I'm teaching the altar practice is this concept of listening. It feels like that is such a big piece across the board. And a lot of us forget how to listen, because it often has to do with slowing down and quieting. And that's one of the reasons why I start the altar practice with the blank canvas, because often the immediate thing is, yes, I know how to do alt, and we fill things up, right? And it's like, can we start it can we develop that listening by slowing down, which often we end up in after we do medicines and after we do breath work, where we can meet that inner place through that listening, and then allow the instrument, as you're speaking, Susana, that reminded me of that, or the altar or the creation, right? To give us the information in a way we do when we wake up and we're in that middle stage from a dream, right? If we rush through it, it escapes us. If we stay and just kind of recapture the little jewels that start coming, the sensory in our bodies, the, ooh, how do I want to move? How do I want to respond? There's a whole other process that develops.
That's gorgeous. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all that with us. I wish that we had more time for questions and such, but I would like to invite everybody to spend a couple of moments over in the our virtual hallway. We've got a kind of a virtual hangout spot in the Azo room, which I'll put in the jam. And I don't know if you guys feel like going over there and seeing who pops in, if you want to hang out with folks or not. If you have time, you're welcome to. If not, I understand. Thank you all for your kind attention. Coming up next, we have Dr. Eric. We'll be talking about good integration starts with preparation, and Lorna Liana of Entheo Nation will be talking about keys to decolonizing plant medicine ceremonies. And so both important topics. How will you ever pick? But again, so glad you're here, and looking forward to seeing you all for the rest of the weekend. And again, thank you all so much for being a part of the jam.
Thank you for inviting us. This was great.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. It's truly wonderful. Be well, everyone.
Bye-bye.